Joining us in studio, Zamo Madlala, spokesperson for Black Empowerment Foundation, and Tsepo Khadima, political analyst. Botsang Muilwa is a political analyst, and Alfred Shabala from Right to Know is a Gauteng member, will join us on the line. Mosiri Tsiane from the South African Liberty Foundation. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks so much for joining us. This is the part where you say Happy Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month.
And all in chorus, I appreciate that.
But you're going to listen to what O.R. Tambo said in terms of the role of women, and he said this more than 30 years ago. So if anything, I think we should be celebrating. But it's been a long, long, long road.
Absolutely, a long road, and great strides being made. As we celebrate that part of our history, there's also that the veil of secrecy that needs to be pierced when it comes to apartheid-era crimes. We see it happening in the courts. Now it is at the doorstep of the Reserve Bank. No surprises that there is resistance in that part. Tsepo, we'll start with you.
Well, no surprising, yes, but despicable indeed. That we can have a South African Reserve Bank, which is an organ of statute, and also under the Constitution that we had thought that once and for all would ensure that everything else is out in the open and there is transparency, and that they can still be really with a straight face, more than 20 years after the new Constitution, and still want to have concealment of that which actually can assist this nation to be able to fully understand what has happened previously, particularly during apartheid era, which was, by the way, declared a crime against humanity, so that we can really get to the bottom of it, and where there is supposed to be restitution, let it be restitution by understanding what had gone wrong, and also to ensure that we do not repeat the really those practices that are so really despicable from the apartheid era, and more so financial crimes as the case is in this regard. You can't read the books or the works of Henny van Vieren. He wrote, the grand apartheid corruption. He wrote about the apartheid money and guns, as well as Stephen Goodson, who wrote the book on the Reserve Bank and its secrets exposed. You can't go and read those with limited information and not have fully appreciate why this application brought before court is so important, that actually more needs to be revealed, more needs to come out in the open, and there should be no fear. I cannot understand for the life of me why the current Reserve Bank governor would actually go to this extraordinary lengths to go and conceal that which ordinarily we would have thought that it should have been welcoming, so that at least once and for all we have a Reserve Bank we can trust.
Well, evening, Cindy, fellow panelists and the viewers. I do understand, and I must say to Tsepo, this doesn't come as a surprise to me. Human beings, naturally, they owe their alliance to those who feed them. Human beings owe their alliance to those who employ them. The current governor of the Reserve Bank and all other governors of the Reserve Bank we have ever had in this country, they do not serve the best interest of this country. I've said it before that we do not have a central bank in this country. The South African Reserve Bank, the way it's constituted and its historical background, it is not a central bank of the country. We inherited a legacy of apartheid. This organization is trying to unfold and unpack what actually happened so that we can see whether the South African Reserve Bank serves the country or not. And for them to refuse is actually confirming what I've always been saying, to say this is not the central bank of the state. It is serving the best interest of the shareholders. What government is doing, they are a mere endorser of what the shareholders and the board of governors do in selecting who should lead the Reserve Bank, and the government comes administratively due to the confines of the Constitution to just endorse that. I still do not understand why all other public service institutions, like the Public Protector, like a SCOPA, for example, like the Ministry of Finance, being silent when the Reserve Bank is supposed to be a stationary of government, and the Ministry of Finance or Treasury is silent about such issues. We had the TRC in this country, which looked at very painful apartheid-era atrocities. And they were unpacked. Even black African people who were oppressed and went through those atrocities, they were forced to come and say things that they've done due to the apartheid atrocities. But now, when it is in the best interest of everybody, including business sector, including government, including individuals like me and you who are paying taxes, and now nobody wants to open this Pandora box of the South African Reserve Bank. And I think government is supposed to put its foot down. The ruling party also, they are not coming up with policies that are going to drive and force the Reserve Bank to become a public entity, which is not at the moment.
Yeah, but I mean, we understand that there is a very tight hedge around the Reserve Bank, the financial institutions in this country. And the complaint rather cited is the stability of the rand and the economic confidence from investors. The public protector was criticized herself, in fact, shred to pieces, with wanting to extend the Reserve Bank's mandate. Now come the historians wanting to reveal apartheid financial crimes, and it's also trivialized as wanting to compile a book for personal gain. Zamo.
Okay, but thank you for the opportunity, Cindy. But before we even get there, let's start here. The mines currently are going to shed jobs, thousands and thousands of jobs, and they're telling us it's because the currency is too strong. The Reserve Bank is saying, on the other hand, they can't let this go because they're trying to protect the currency. So somewhere along the line, somebody and everybody is actually lying to the public. Like my colleagues have said, we've had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but we've never had the Economic Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which says that the apartheid government actually was supported by companies. It did not keep itself up. It was funded. Perhaps it is those very same companies that have continued to make money. Now the question is, why does the Reserve Bank not want those truths to come out? Because they are there and they would be obvious.
Maybe, I mean, the truth at the expense of maybe regressing on the gains that have been made in terms of the stability in the country.
What stability?
What
stability?
If you, I'm going to go with the popular lexicon, about being downgraded, about jobs being shed, about, General Motors and other companies leaving the country because it's no longer a preferred a destination for investments.
Amid those protection, those lies, that veil that they put in the eyes of the unsuspecting people, the jobs are still being lost. The rent has been fluctuating even due to the banks. There's been all these investments and so forth. Amid all the secrecy behind the Reserve Bank, if we say in order to protect the markets and the safety of investment in the country, who is benefiting from those investments and whose markets are those that were, let us put, if it's honest and genuine, let us put the performance, not only during the apartheid era, actually, the whole South African Reserve Bank has to be unpacked on its totality and how it's operating and functioning previously up to today. So it is not for the best interest and best benefit of the majority of the population of this country. It is not even benefiting the government of the day, because we have seen how the Reserve Bank has failed to manage, control banks when they were conniving and stealing money from the country, robbing their own Reserve Bank. They were robbed. The Reserve Bank was robbed by 4 major banks, which included 13 other international banks. And the Reserve Bank has kept quiet until today.
But what will come of this if we just take the ABSA apartheid era loan and the Bancorp saga that has been sitting in the cabinet collecting dust for over almost 2 decades? So what will come out of this, Seppo? And from the tone in court today, it sounds like it's going to be a very difficult exercise to try and extract information that may not even exist in files necessarily.
I don't think the information exists. And those that destroyed 40 tons of documentary records that, in the dawn of democracy, actually they need to be criminally prosecuted. And at the time, the state president was none other than FVA de Klerk. And he needs to actually answer on those documents that were destroyed. We know that. So even in this case, nothing can be kept under the carpet. Nothing can not be there. It is there. It has to be exposed. It is very important for this country, because if we do not take the necessary steps to put everything out in the open, and we continue to have this noise, which is really to distract us from the main issue of how do we ensure that we can restore this country to its economic glory. I was mentioning the other day that in 1980, the rand-dollar exchange was $2 to 1 rand. And at that year, we had over 3,000 tons of gold in reserves. Today, Governor Lesitja Kganyao cannot even take one selfie and show us how much gold we have, because we have nothing. It has all been stolen, and hence our currency has depreciated. He's pleading that actually he wants to maintain a mandate, a sole mandate of protecting the currency. The question is with what? Because he actually is presiding over a Sabino, South African Reserve Bank, in name only. It is neither South African nor does it have any reserves. So the issue is this: we need a reserve bank that can be able to really ensure that we achieve full employment. And by the way, full employment economically means if you got 5% unemployment, it means that you got full employment. That is the really way we need to get to, by the Reserve Bank that can create money. Right now, they've given monetary supply into the hands of the private banks, and by concealing this information is because this information, once it's exposed, we will then be able to follow the money. We will be able to track down the assets that have been dissipated. Interestingly, and it boggles the mind as to how come Lesitja Kganyao seems not to have read a research paper that was delivered on the 17th of September 1984 at Wits University, talking about the history of the Reserve Bank, but also detailing to a great account what the reserves of the South African Reserve Bank were and its origins, and that today, all of that record, all those assets on the capital account have disappeared. It just cannot be correct. So this information, it is absolutely important that it must be unearthed, and so that the public can know the truth, and we can then take remedial action or steps as a country to recover that which has been looted from this republic. And that is important.
All right, let's get a legal opinion. Mosiri Tsiane from the South African Liberty Foundation as the chairperson. Good evening to you, Mosiri, and thanks so much for joining us. In this case, where the Reserve Bank defense attorneys argue that it seems that the historians are essentially doing this for their own benefit and not necessarily to unveil secrets of financial crimes of apartheid, what in your view would be compelling for the court to do? Do you think they may deny this particular application based on the ramifications that they say will destabilize the country?
Well, there is a case currently, Cindy, that is ongoing of Timor, a prisoner who was killed, an activist who was killed many, many years ago. Even today, the case, we see it is alive in court. What are we doing? We're seeking justice. That's what the court intends to achieve. South Africa today, some people don't have a moral standing to can go around and tell people that they are corrupt, when we have not dealt with the actual corrupt relating to the history of South Africa. When we all fought for our freedom, when everybody and leaders that were fighting for freedom, more in particular, they were fighting for the economic freedom. For South Africa has always been about liberty to obtain our consciousness, but above all to attain our livelihood and be regarded as human beings. We cannot, that all the time. One can look in history and see that a lot of evidence has been tried to be hidden. As far as go to the center house that was then the capital city of South Africa in apartheid era was Pretoria. Then you had that building, the huge monument building that was built and burned because there was a lot that needed to be hidden there. Now, there's been a lot of secrecy that has been ongoing. You had a lot of people that during the time that when Mandela came as the president, they banned a lot of information, get off of important positions that they were in, and ran away with information. We cannot, in the life of us today, have anyone who can stand up and say that they have a moral duty to point a finger and say that one is corrupt.
Yeah, but just look at, sorry, Mosiri, just looking at the Constitution, the preamble thereof, of course, is that, you know, there's accountability, there's responsibility and transparency, the right to information, the right to know, so that we can really appreciate the democracy for what it is. And yet, if this is not proven, there isn't material evidence, as Sepo says, that it has been destroyed over the years, it's going to be it's probably going to drag the country into further debt in having, to finance this particular litigation.
Absolutely, Cindy. This right to freedom and right to information and transparency, it has become very clear in the country that it's selective. When it has to do with the historical years of apartheid in South Africa and the white monopoly capital, the white businesses and the banks and how they were formed and founded. No, then we can't touch that because it will upset international markets and investors. So that's not transparency. That's not equality in front of the Constitution when it is actually applied to a certain population or to a certain instances, and in some other instances, those things get investigated or they're just ignored and put aside. So actually, it is the breach of the constitution of this country when some of what is supposed to be government entities are being left to can be autonomous and cannot be touched and cannot be questioned, while other government entities are being taken to court. We have even taken Parliament to court. The Speaker of Parliament has been taken to court by the opposition in this country. That's how much democracy is supposed to function, that nobody is above the law. Whether it's the bank, whether it's the Reserve Bank, we cannot sit here as a nation with a dark cloud hanging over our heads because of the Reserve Bank, that we all know that the majority of its shareholders are actually foreigners in this country. And we know that they don't want to upset investors, but they are prepared to upset the citizens of this country by giving them a currency, even notes that are printed in a foreign country. So this constitutional, allowance, it is actually not saving the population of this country. It's saving some individuals and protecting their rights as well as their monies, which are all over the world and not even in the country.
Yeah. So the simple question I'm asking is the digging up of apartheid financial crime skeletons in the best interests of the country in terms of democracy and creating the vibrant, elusive economy to create jobs and change people's lives?
There is trillions of rands of South African assets that have been looted and are in foreign countries. They need to be returned to this country to be able to build this country. And if we fail to do so, if this government, by the way, I cannot for the life of me understand why Parliament and the government are so timid to really actually bring the Reserve Bank in line. It boggles the mind. But very soon, we will end up with riots that are 10 times worse than what we saw either in Latin America or even in places such as Greece. And I think the recent G20 meeting, where even in Germany, you saw people really coming out and rioting and being so violently opposed to the system of things. That is something that, are we ready to go back to that era in this country? This time is going to be worse than the struggle against apartheid. So it is important that people need to act responsibly. So in this case, I'm saying that the Reserve Bank governor needs to act responsibly. If he feels that perhaps maybe this is too hard a job to do, you know what? There can always be another Reserve Bank governor appointed. But we cannot have a situation whereby really we are being driven. And this is of investors, by the way, there is no investor. That let me tell you. Because the so-called investors, they are talking about people who at the end of the day are investing in bonds that are going into a budget and now in fact even servicing our interest on the debt that we have. So that is not an investor. I cannot understand how even the ANC or even government can say that we are trying to please investors. They are not investors. We are borrowing money so that we can be able to pay the 200 billion plus interest on our debt. And by the way, the whole now is over 250 billion rand just this year. And hence I'm saying, before the end of the year will be run by IMF. These are serious issues. And those reserves that have been stolen, if they were returned, we could be saved from having to be enslaved by IMF.
The probability thereof, though, I suppose we won't know until the process has concluded. But so much has happened in this country that I think people have got vested interest. We're precious about the ability to use the same facilities with all different race groups. We're precious about the ability or the fact that we've progressed in the management structures as black people, the opportunities, etc. That this may just be one of those that is not. Are we ready for it?
Certainly we are ready for it. We'll start with yesterday. Yesterday you ran a show. Businesses telling you they're sitting with 1.4 trillion rands. Where did that 1.4 trillion rands come from? Perhaps investigating the Reserve Bank back all the way back to 1921 will tell you how you end up with business that sits with 1.4 trillion rands and is comfortable not reinvesting it. because they don't even need to have interest on it because maybe it was acquired improper. Who knows? But if you don't open the door, you'll never know. So we actually need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on economy. No longer on the atrocities only, on the economic atrocities. Because business cannot sit with 1.4 trillion rands and say they are comfortable sitting with cash because business only goes for profit. Meaning in apartheid years, business only went for profit. Right now, they only seek to go for profit. So when it comes to the majority, well, we don't care about the majority because the majority has never had and they've been disenfranchised for 400 years, so leave it as it was. So we'll hold our cash.
Keep watching the 1.4 trillion rand because my biggest suspicion is that the holders of that 1.4 trillion rand know that it's all about to go up in smoke in a very short order of time. So the most probably they are going to subvert the foreign exchange controls and try and externalize that money. So we need to keep an even higher scrutiny on the South African Reserve Bank that it must make sure that it keeps a tighter control on foreign exchange controls that they've been lax on, because that money soon will find that it's no longer there. These corporates are going to siphon it out of the country. So we have to keep much more watchful eye.
Sorry, Bosang, just very quickly, Alfred Shabala joins us. He's from the Right to Know, Gauteng. He's a Gauteng member. Mr. Shabala, thanks so much for joining us. Is this in the best public interest, this information to be revealed for our scrutiny?
I'm happy also to join you. Look, when you're talking the issues of the South African Reserve Bank, you must really think as to what are you talking about, what institution you're talking about, and what are they used to be. And if in fact it has to be explained. I don't know how much did you go on that question. You have to explain to the public what are you talking about in terms of Reserve Bank. This bank has been used to run through the state, the secret state. There's never been anything opened about it. It has never allowed itself to be an instrument of the public to be used. And even at whatever money, even at the greatest times when the apartheid was being fought all over, when we thought as communities that we are being assisted, the bank, that kind of a bank, was able to just go on business as usual. It was able to go to international world, having allies. We've got this information is all over now that we have from the civil society, a book that has been written and information that has been provided. So we need to go there to the bank itself and look how transparent it is, how is it complying with a constitutional development, as we are a constitutional state today as we speak. Before we are even talking about it, we must be able to say how much are we able to influence it. Is it a public institution? Is it a privately owned? Do we have shareholders in those people? Is it controlled by the few people? Because then we could be fooling ourselves in thinking that in actual fact, that is one state control. It's state control, of course, but to me, it controls the state affairs because it uses that status in order to be in a position to suppress, to run the way it wants. It's always been an apartheid institution. It never transformed. And not at once. And there was never even a time when we asked about instruments that are controlling it, how much has it transformed so far. Right, so anything that has got to do with monies that are running there has to be accounted for in a very accountable way, the way the Constitution, in terms of the Bill of Rights, requires us to do.
So short answer is yes, it is in the public interest. If you can do 10 seconds.
Just a quick one. The mistake we have made as a nation is to try and build a democratic society on a rotten foundation. We did not dismantle institutions and creations of apartheid like the Reserve Bank. We actually allowed them to continue to function the way they functioned prior 1994. What we should do is we should nip the Reserve Bank and cut the umbilical cord of the Reserve Bank from the democratic dispensation. Dismantle the whole process, even if investigation takes place, but we must dismantle the way the Reserve Bank had been operating since its inception in 1921. If we do not do that, we'll never get to the bottom of this process.
All right, we'll watch this one very closely. I'm sure much more will be unveiled. Shocking secrets indeed we're expecting to find out in the history of South Africa. Economic Codesa seemingly is way overdue. But thanks to our panelists, and thanks to Mr. Shabala for joining us. You at home, much appreciated. We're back after this.